Today, I will be talking about what is currently happening in America, and I wish I could say I'm super excited to talk about this topic, but no, I am not. But it is a necessary evil that needs to be addressed regardless. All right, so today we'll be talking about the US, and specifically, we are going to be talking about what is going on with visa bans, travel bans, holds on people's processing, for United States benefits, etc. However, I kind of want to take a minute for, before I get into the thick of things, and specifically ask some of you amazing, beautiful people that followed me last year along the journey, right, where I talked about how to school in the US. I had remember my video part 1 and 2, where I talked about how to school in the US 1 and 2. That's kind of how this channel took off, right? And a lot of you followed me for that and really enjoyed the content. I remember giving shout outs to people in Kenya, Tanzania, in different places, right? South Africa, Nigeria, Ghana, that were following me because of this. How are you guys doing this year? How has last year treated you? And I know I was on a break for 8 months for a while, and I know that was around the time that people were applying, and some people got feedback or responses. Some haven't gotten responses yet from universities. I'm curious. I want to know what has the journey been like for you guys. Please leave a comment and let me know how you're doing. And I also want to know, what was the experience like? Were you able to get admitted? Let us know in the comment section so we could celebrate you. And if you were able to get admitted, were you able to travel last year? Because this is probably for people who were following my channel from 2024 ending, so fall of 2024, and were you able to travel in 2025? Also, if you guys remember, at some point in 2025, I released a video where I talked about considering other countries besides the US, and I mentioned Canada, China, Finland, Norway, Sweden, China, Japan. I don't know if I said China twice, but it is what it is. Korea, but there are different places you could consider, Germany and all of that, because these are places that also have advanced education and but well-developed systems where you could also learn and contribute to science or art, whatever your field is, and everything in between. So in my head, I remember making this video where I talked about considering other places, because the climate over here in the US was starting to change, right? Things were starting to look funny, things were starting to look suspicious, and I was like, guys, consider other places. So I'm curious, who took that advice last year? If that helped you in any way, I kind of want to know. But if it didn't, if you heard it but you still went ahead to apply to school in the US just to try, and what has the journey been like? I just share so we can all commune and connect on that and just kind of talk things through. Today, I kind of want to talk about where we are in the United States and what is going on right now. Now, I know a couple of people walked with me at some point last year, literally one-on-one, at least, for a given period of time to prepare them for grad school application and just kind of be ready to put out strong applications. Some people got admitted, some with funding, some without funding. Very, very few, maybe honestly 2 people that I know got funding last year. The climate was really bad because universities were starting to be scared that their fundings were getting cut by the government, so they're not able to recruit in more graduate students on their own dime, and so they started to cut down admission slots. Right now, in fast forward to 2026, the problem has even blown up right now. There are countries that are facing travel bans. However, let's back up a little bit, right? Because a lot has happened. All right, welcome to Act 1. Now, back in the year 2017, the US released a list of 7 countries that were considered high-risk countries based on national security. The summary of why these countries were selected was information sharing and identity management a failure. You could simply say the US cited vetting deficiency issues. So they cannot vet the individuals because their countries are not vetting them properly. And so 7 countries were listed in the first travel ban in 2017. Later in the same year, the list was revisited and 8 countries eventually made it to the list. Some countries fell out of it, some countries re-entered the list, and so this was the 8 countries that were left later in 2017. Welcome to Act number 2. In 2020, the travel list ban was revisited by the government at the time, and 6 countries were added to this travel list ban, and this is the list as at that time in 2020 when the list was revisited. And in this case, the US government was citing issues around unwillingness or the inability of the government of these countries to provide information about their citizens. And again, it's bordering around information sharing and vetting and just poor data management from, quote unquote, the government of these countries. And the US government have a problem with the way they think that government manages things. And so I guess the way to punish that government is kind of like when two elephants fight, right? The grasshoppers, and now the citizens are dealing with the backlash of this issue. For act number 3, it is 2025, sometime around summer. I remember when the US government issued some kind of warning. I'm from Nigeria. Nigeria was one of the countries that were warned that, hey, we're going to be considered for a travel ban if we don't fix this issue around identity data management and also issues around security, right? And I remember seeing that information. I remember being shocked. I remember being worried that Nigeria was considered to get on the travel bans list. This was around summer 2025. Fast forward down to December 2025. The government released 19 countries that were considered to be fully banned or have received full travel ban from their countries to be able to travel to the United States, and they added 19 other countries with partial travel ban restrictions. And of course, Nigeria was one of the 19 countries that fall under the partial ban travel restriction. Now, the full ban restriction just means that it doesn't matter the kind of visa you have, right? Except you probably have a diplomatic visa, you will not be able to travel to come to the United States if you are in the full ban country. And these are the 19 countries that are part of the full bans list. And now Nigeria being part of the partial ban, these are the countries that are part of the partial ban. You can pause and just take a look to see if your country is part of it. But what we're dealing with here is that for countries that have partial ban, what it means is that this is partial ban for non-immigrant visa. Okay, for the countries that have full ban, that includes non-immigrant visa, immigrant visa, just everything. You just can't travel to the United States, period. Now let's look at the reason for these 38 countries being banned, right? 19 countries for fully banned travel restrictions and 19 countries for partial ban for travel restrictions. What is the reason that was cited? Once again, unwillingness or inability to share identity data or information about citizens. That is the reason. Now that brings us into act number 4. You made it to number 4. Okay, so it's January 2026, and the government now recently released another list with 75 countries now facing a freeze, right, on travel restrictions around immigrant visas, specifically immigrant visas. And remember, in December, for countries like Nigeria, again, I'll keep using that as an example, for the partial ban travel countries. By December, that proclamation allowed Nigerians that were facing immigrant visa situation, so through family or marriage, if that's what you were trying to do, that would have been fine by December. But crossover to January, that had changed because now the immigrant visa category has now been hit, and 75 countries, in fact, in that is placed in that big bucket of countries that are no longer allowed to to have visa processing within that category, say for immigrant category specifically. Now, this is mostly going to affect people that are outside the US because you are trying to come into the US using an immigrant visa. And this time around, what is the reason being cited? Oh, this one is very interesting. The reason being cited is fear of these immigrants becoming a public charge. Let me explain what public charge means if you've never heard the term. Public charge literally means what it means. It means you are becoming a charge to the public. Now, this means that you are going to be someone who's going to come to America and probably not have a job, or perhaps have a job but not be making enough money, and then you would depend on the public to feed you. And so it means if you go line up to get a food stamp, if you depend on the government for your daily bread, let me put it in simple terms, the way we can understand. If you have to depend on the government for your sustenance, you are a public charge because the money that the government will spend on you, right, comes from the taxes of the American people. And so the government is saying, hey, we want to keep these resources circulating around for Americans only. Now, how does this affect you? Say, for example, you got admitted to school in the United States today, or Woo, woo, woo. You got admitted last year, you got admitted last fall, or you had applied last year and you received an email today that says, congratulations, you just got accepted to Stanford and you are welcome to resume school in August. What are you going to do? Right? So we're going to look at three scenarios. Scenario number one, you are from a country that is on a full bans list. Scenario number two, you're from a country that is on the partial bans list. And scenario number three, you're from a country that is not listed on either of those lists.